The Department of Juvenile Justice has 5 secure facilities housing juveniles across the state, with more than 400 children housed in these secure facilities. As of right now, there are more than 60 children housed at the Broad River Road facility. It is the same facility that has been facing serious staffing shortages and security concerns for months. Changes in leadership bring new hope for the students housed at the facility and the people who work there. News 19's Eleanor Tabone has the story.
This is the South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice. Behind the high razor fences are children. Children who have been remanded to the custody of the state because they are accused of having committed crimes. Some have been convicted.
They can be here for murder on down.
Earlier this year, News 19 walked down those very halls of the Broad River facility, visiting a class of GED graduates.
Every kid that gets to attain that GED, we celebrate them.
According to the agency, 95 students statewide last school year received their GED. But for the other students behind those walls were concerns. Concerns that came to light in a 200-page Legislative Audit Council report in 2017, which found 101 recommendations for improvement, most centred around safety. In May of this year, News 19 spoke to Marcia Lindsay, the Deputy Director of the Legislative Audit Council, which conducted the audit and reported the findings.
People were telling me that they were scared to go to work. People who'd worked there for years. And people also told us they were just really scared that somebody was going to end up dying because of the security or the lack thereof.
Staff concerns came to a head on June 4th. That's when dozens of DJJ employees left their post in protest of working conditions.
As a parent, as a staff member, you don't know if you're going to come in here and leave out the same way you came.
Security concerns, staffing hours and staff shortages triggered the walkout, with protesters at the time alleging they're working 24-hour shifts with little to no breaks. Through a Freedom of Information Act request, WLTX requested 6 months worth of incident reports at DJJ. This is what some of those reports showed. On January 9th of this year, a juvenile reportedly spat at staff. The staff member writing the student was out of control. On the same day, another employee reported he was bombarded to get out of the pod by juveniles, going on to say he feared for his well-being and other juveniles. On March 22nd, a student allegedly grabbed and lifted a staff member into the air, slamming them onto a table, then stole the staff member's keys, threatening to hurt them. On April 12th, this report alleges a student threw a desk at a staff member. That staff member saying they plan to press charges. Shortly after the walkout, I spoke to then Director Freddie Pugh. At the time, I asked him what kept him up at night.
What keeps me up at night? All of the variables of this agency.
Those variables landed him a vote of no confidence by members of the State Senate Corrections and Penology Subcommittee. By mid-September, Pugh resigned. Fast forward to today, the Department of Juvenile Justice has a new acting director, Eden Hendrick. Hendrick is a South Carolina attorney that started her career in family law. Now in the director's seat, she acknowledges the department is facing an uphill battle.
It's been hard to walk in and, try to deal with a lot of the issues that are going on.
Hendrick saying her greatest concern, staffing shortages.
We have referral bonuses for our employees. We have sign-on bonuses.
Hendrick also says staff will receive training on verbal de-escalation skills.
To be quite honest with you, she is a breath of fresh air.
Wes Laws is the woodworking teacher at DJJ. Wes and I have spoken multiple times since the walkout back in June. Sitting down with me now, that Hendrick has taken up the position. Law says he understands change will not happen overnight.
Eleanor I think that she has the best interest of the young people that have been entrusted in our care at heart, and she has the best interest of the staff that's there at heart as well.
It's not like she can just walk in and change things, because we've got at least 4 or 5 years of DJJ falling off the train tracks.
Senator Katrina Shealy is on the Senate Corrections Subcommittee and has been pushing for change at DJJ since the Legislative Audit Report.
I'm excited she's there. I hope she has patience, and I hope she has the willpower to want to stay and work through this.
Nobody wants to work in that dangerous situation for the kind of money they're paying. We need to get the pay up.
Senator Dick Harpootlian, who's also on the Senate subcommittee, believes addressing the staffing shortage is key.
You're not going to get safety until you get adequate number of guards, and you're not going to get an adequate number of guards until they feel it's safe to work there. So it's chicken or egg. So in the interim, perhaps the National Guard ought to come in.
I asked both senators what they want to see happen in the next year and then in the next 5 years.
In the next year, I hope we've restaffed. I hope that we are back to where children are making a difference when they leave.
I want to see them get back to where they were kids were actually being educated and were safe.
In Columbia, Eleanor Tabone, News 19 WLTX.
Well, according to the department, there are 80 vacant juvenile correctional officer positions. If you'd like to become a correctional officer, you can head to the South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice website.
Today at the State House, Governor McMaster announced Eden Hendrick as the next executive director of the state's Department of Juvenile Justice. Hendrick has been the active director in that position since September, following the resignation of former director Freddie Pugh. She spoke today on what she plans to achieve as the director of DJJ.
As the director of DJJ, it is my goal to improve the outcomes for the youth system-wide, but also ensure that all DJJ employees have a safe and secure working environment. Reforming DJJ will be complicated and a difficult process that will take time. I am optimistic and inspired by the change that has occurred in the past 5 months since I've been there.
Hendrick says some of her other goals are to include addressing staffing shortages and children with mental health issues. At the State House, lawmakers are on their way to confirming a new leader at DJJ. In February, Governor McMaster picked Eden Hendrick to be the next director of the agency. And as News 19's Julia Kaufman reports, once she's confirmed by the Senate, she can officially take over.
All in favor of sending Ms. Hendrick to the full Senate with a favorable report, say aye. Aye.
After about an hour of questioning, the Senate Corrections and Penology Committee approved Eden Hendrick to be the next director of South Carolina's Department of Juvenile Justice.
I look at what you've done over time, and I mean, you like moving, you like getting things done.
I do. Well, I can say this. It's going to take a long time to make real change at DJJ.
Hendrick became acting director in September when Freddie Pugh stepped down. Then she became interim director and says she's reorganized the agency and its programs.
The main goal is just providing those basic services, social work service, psychology services, psychiatric services, group therapy, some of those just, basic things.
Senators questioned Hendrick on how she plans to improve youth experiences beyond safety and security.
I created a community treatment division that's solely focused on providing mental health treatment. We're trying to expand the activities we do with the youth. We have a staff youth flag football game today at 1 o'clock. Yesterday we had tie-dye day.
When asked what she needs funding for, Hendrick says the Broad River Road facility has been over capacity by about 30 children for months.
That's one of our greatest needs, is maybe to expand the capacity of that if we're going to have to continue to house that many youth.
She says she's also focused on hiring the right staff and improving family visitation.
I think the entire General Assembly, the state of South Carolina is rooting for you.
Hendrick will need to be confirmed by the full Senate before removing interim from her title. That confirmation could happen as early as next week. At the State House, Julia Kaufman, News 19, WLTX.
Also at the State House, South Carolina State Department of Juvenile Justice has official new leadership now. State lawmakers confirming their interim leader, Eden Hendrick, as the next executive director of DJJ. The governor saying tonight that DJJ has made incredible progress during the short time that Ms. Hendrick has been serving as their acting director.
We're also learning more about a group disturbance at the Department of Juvenile Justice that led 2 young people to be hospitalized. It happened yesterday at the Broad River facility in Columbia. According to Senator Katrina Shealy, who leads the DJJ Oversight Committee, a lock in a sock and a shower head in a sock were used as weapons in the dispute, which new DJJ Director Eden Hendrick says was under control within 15 minutes. Of those hospitalized, one was released soon after, while the other was held overnight for observation. The disturbance comes on the heels of intense department scrutiny with reports of unsafe conditions and understaffing, but Senator Shealy says things are getting better.
Even with the new director, there's still a shortage of staff. You know, it's still hard to get people to come to, you know, the juvenile detention centers to work. And we can't change that overnight. You know, she's made a lot of changes. She has changed staff. She has a new deputy director that she's hired from out of state. Things are getting better.
Well, as the state budget is finalized, the senator added that additional funding for higher pay and improved facilities is included. As for yesterday's incident, SLED is helping to investigate. We did reach out to DJJ for further comment, but did not hear back. And we begin with a new report that's been released by the U.S. Department of Justice after a years-long investigation into the State Department of Juvenile Justice. Well, as our News 19's Julia Kaufman reports, the investigation details disturbing incidents, and DJJ's new director says they're actively making changes to address them.
The South Carolina Department of Juvenile Justice has been under fire for years. At the state level, a legislative investigation found facilities were understaffed and unsafe.
We're not slaves.
In June 2021, employees protested conditions at the Broad River Road complex in Columbia. Then former director Freddie Pugh stepped down in September. Now, the U.S. Department of Justice has released the findings from an investigation that ran from 2017 to 2020.
Those are horrifying things to even think about that they happened.
The department says it found staff at Broad River Road failed to keep youth safe and used excessive force when unnecessary. News 19 spoke with DJJ's new director, Eden Hendrick, about the evidence.
Some examples of excessive use of force on the youth were hog-tying a boy, putting a boy in a chokehold, breaking a boy's arm, and biting a girl in the face. What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is that sounds awful, terrible.
Hendrick says the incidents happened before she was with the agency, but says officials immediately began working with DOJ to remedy issues, including updating the surveillance system.
By putting in this camera system in place that is state-of-the-art, top of the technology, is really going to change the way we operate.
When it comes to abusive staff, Hendrick says she doesn't have a tolerance for it.
It's really important not only just to hire people and folks, but it's important to hire people who have the right mindset and have the right idea.
Hendrick says they're working to change the use of force policy and will soon start new training programs for staff. Senator Gerald Malloy hopes to overhaul the state's juvenile justice system with legislation he's been working on for years.
It just would limit removal of children from the community and punitive care of juvenile justice, keeps them from issues as isolation.
His bill didn't meet the crossover deadline this session, but he hopes it still has a chance to pass this year. In Columbia, Julia Kaufman, News 19, WLTX.
Well, Director Hendricks says DJJ is also working to change its solitary confinement policies, and she says the use of confinement has drastically declined since she took over.
News 19's Zoe Henry has those details.
If we have an incident, instead of now having like 2 cameras, we're going to have 22 cameras.
At an advisory board meeting focusing on the State Department of Juvenile Justice Friday, Agency Director Eden Hendrick discussed efforts aimed at keeping a better eye on what's happening within the facility's walls.
So it's going to be and you can Zoom and you can follow people. It's one of the top technologies, I think, in the country that we have.
The added cameras could help since the agency is still facing staffing shortages and issues with the residents. Just last week, DJJ confirmed a disturbance at the facility that led to the hospitalizations of at least 2 youth. Prior to that, there have been a number of reports, including residents escaping from the facility and attacks on staff, dating back to 2017. The department is looking to increase staffing. It's also looking to reduce the number of youth inside its fences. Some with needs, Hendricks says the facility is not equipped to address. The Department of Health and Environmental Control is lending a hand to help with placing residents with mental illnesses.
With one of their psychiatrists actually leaving, we've been able to use some of our contract psychiatrists as well as Dr. Simmer from DHEC to offer to cover some of the kids at DJJ in the intervening time period.
Hendricks says this is only the beginning of many projects to come as the department works toward juvenile reform in South Carolina. In Columbia, Zoe Henry, News 19, WLTX.
And we're being told that money for that improvement would come from the state budget.
Changes are planned for the State Department of Juvenile Justice aimed at improving safety for both those who are incarcerated and staff. At an advisory meeting, Department Director Eden Hendrick discussed efforts for more supervision in detention centers. DJJ is in the process of installing a new camera system. This system will increase visibility throughout the detention centers. In addition to new surveillance systems, the department says staffing shortages are a priority, as is decreasing the number of youth inside facilities, which Hendrick says are over capacity.
Unfortunately, that is a huge struggle for us. The detention center is only supposed to house 72 youth, and it has averaged over 100 since, I think, December. I think I've testified to this numerous times.
Money for the improvement would come from the state budget, which has yet to be approved by lawmakers.
The committee also reports on the issue of juvenile justice, and the group says the State Department of Juvenile Justice is struggling to adequately serve and rehabilitate youth in its custody. Now, here are some of their recommendations. They need to decrease the number of children entering DJJ custody through community-based programs. They need to improve the conditions within DJJ facilities and eliminate the use of solitary confinement, decreasing the amount of time children spend waiting for mental health evaluations, preparing youth exiting the DJJ system for re-entry into the community. In order to make these changes, the committee is urging lawmakers to support South Carolina Juvenile Justice Reform Act. It is a wide-ranging bill that addresses a number of issues that include a ban on solitary confinement, and it would establish a Bill of Rights for children in state custody. That bill did not move beyond the Senate committee this legislative session.